Hey folks, this is Dr. K, and today we're going to look at how to create the hamburger menu in my bookstore. So this is the current menu in my bookstore, and you can see that there's a hamburger icon right here. When I hover over it, I get the categories. All right, classics, fantasy, mystery, romance, and I'm already on the category page. So let's go to the welcome page, and you can see that I click on one of the categories, I get to the category page. That's all well and fine, but that is not a hamburger menu. A hamburger menu is something you click on and it sticks to the screen until you dismiss it. So that's what I want to create. I want to create a hamburger menu for this. I want to turn that hover drop down into a hamburger menu. And I'm not just going to have categories, I'm going to have some other things too. Okay, so the first thing I want you to notice before we even get started is I want you to notice the structure of the HTML here. All right, so we have essentially this outer class, which I'm giving it a class main menu container, and that contains two other classes. It contains a main menu button and a main menu panel, and the main menu panel is where all of the menu items go. Okay, so you can see that all those are main menu items. And this is a structure I'm going to use throughout this walkthrough. So you're going to see, let me see if I have this. You're going to see a menu container which contains the button and the panel contains multiple items. So one of the reasons why this is important is right now we've got main menu container, main menu panel, main menu button, etc. I'm also going to put a submenu in here, and the submenu is going to have the same structure, and I'm going to call the submenu classes submenu container, submenu panel, submenu button, and so on. Okay, so keep this structure in mind, and especially that the main menu container has the menu button and the menu panel. And in fact, before we move on to the hamburger menu, let's talk about this hover drop down here. Because the main thing to know about this hover drop down, I'm not going to talk about this a lot because this is not the topic of this tutorial, but the main thing to understand in the hover drop down is this panel is what appears and disappears. Okay, and that's going to be the same in the hamburger menu too. The panel is going to be what appears and disappears. So I start out with a class saying the main menu panel has a display of none, which means I'm not going to display it. All right. And that's going to turn into a display of block, which means it is displayed whenever I hover over the main menu container. All right. So not just the main menu button. Whenever I hover anywhere over the main menu container, which, remember, the container contains the button and the panel, this main menu panel is going to display. All right. If I just made it so that it would display when I hovered over the button, then as soon as I would try to get into the panel would disappear. All right, but since I made it so that it displays whenever I hover over the main menu container, I'm fine. And it's not until I leave that container that the menu disappears. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this drop down into a hamburger. So the first thing I want to do is, you'll notice that my panel here has the same background color as my navigation bar. And it's just kind of blending into that navigation bar. I do want it to have the same background color. In my case, that's the design I want, but I don't want it to look like it just blends in there. So I want to put a little drop shadow around this panel so that it stands out a bit here. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I'm just going to change the main menu panel, the CSS for the main menu panel. And I'm going to do that by adding a box shadow. All right, and I'm going to put 0, 0, and I'm going to explain these in a second. 0, 0, 0, and I think 8 should be okay. And then I'm going to save that. So this 0, 0, this is the X and Y offsets. So if you want to offset your shadow to the left, the right, the bottom, or whatever, then you're going to manipulate these. I don't want to offset my shadow. I just want a simple box shadow, a simple drop shadow around the whole thing. The 10px is the blur radius. All right, so it's going to blur out 10 pixels, and that's about what I want. You can also set the size of the shadow. Okay, if you put that to 0, then the size is the same as the size of the box. Okay, if you put it to 2 or 4, then the size increases. If you make it a negative number, then the size decreases. I'm just going to have it the same size of the box. So all I really want is this little blur around it. And then this is the color of the blur. And this is a color. You can see 4 digits there. This is actually, well, let's see, how do I do this? I'm looking for the abbreviation. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so this is actually the same as a hex value of, this is RGBA. So this is red, green, blue, and alpha. All right, so this 0, 0 would be the same as 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. You just double everything, 8, 8. Okay, so my R would be 0, my B would be, my G would be 0, my B would be 0, and my alpha would be 88. You just double all those numbers. So that's just a shorthand. This is particularly good when you're working with black or white values that you just need some transparency on. And I mean, if you do it this way, you can only get transparencies 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. And that means, you know, 11%, 22%, 33%, and so on. So here we have, and I'm sorry, I said transparency. This is actually the opacity. Okay, so here we have a opacity of 88%. So it's almost going to be black, but there's going to be a slight transparency on it. But the opacity is almost 90%. So let's see what that looks like. And you can see that there now that shadow is on there. It looks good to me, but just as a test here, let me change this to 2. So now we have an opacity of 22%, and have to remember to save that. And then when I hover over this, you can see that you may be able to see this on the video, but there is still a drop shadow there, but it's very, very hard to see. Okay, so I've tweaked this a little bit before. I like an opacity of 88, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep that.